Benvenuto, welcome to Cherry Hill Home Cooking. My name is Mark. Today we're going to be making meatball stew, which is very similar to beef stew, but instead of using beef or chuck beef cut into little pieces, we're going to make some tasty little meatballs to go in our stew. Now, first thing I want to say is there's a lot of ingredients, which we'll go over in a minute. And also the written recipe is going to be for, we'll easily serve 6 if there's, if you're really big eaters. Now I'm going to double this, which I normally would double this whole recipe anyway, because then we'll have some for leftovers during the week. Plus I can freeze some and we'll have it in the freezer when we feel like having meatball stew. But the reason I'm doubling this today is my BFF is going to have knee surgery in a couple days, and I'm going to make several dishes for her so that she doesn't have to worry about having supper ready and on the table for her family, at least for the first few days after surgery. So this is one of the things we're going to make for her. Okay, so as I said, it looks like a lot of ingredients because there is, but this is a stew, so there's a lot of little components to it. First thing we're going to do is we're going to make some nice savory meatballs. One of the big differences with a regular beef stew and this meatball stew that I'm going to make today is I do use some tomato sauce and some tomato paste in it, so it does give it, that additional flavor of tomato as opposed to just a beef, and also the meatballs. So now we're not going to necessarily make my normal meatball recipe mix. It's got some of the same components, but so for a single batch of this, you're going to need about 1.5 pounds of ground beef. I used the 85/15 in this recipe because you do want a little bit of that fat to help the meatballs stay soft. We need a large egg. We're going to need some breadcrumbs. All right, today I'm just using some seasoned breadcrumbs with Pecorino Romano cheese. I'd normally use my own, but I don't have any. I haven't made another batch yet, and I've used everything up. We're going to need salt and pepper, of course. We're going to need some garlic powder, onion powder, Italian seasoning, salt and pepper, like I said. We're going to need a little bit of milk. And I'm not sure if I mentioned the Worcestershire sauce, but if not, I'll mention it again. The Worcestershire sauce is that... it gives it that umami, that beefy flavor, which I think works really well with this type of meatball. All right, so that's going to be our meatball mix, and we're going to mix that up and fry those up in a bit. All right, so then for the broth, we're going to need some beef broth. Now, again, this is my homemade beef broth, or beef stock, I should say, my homemade beef stock. Which you can also find in one. We've done a video on that. Wade he can link it over there for you guys. Now, the one thing I want to talk about the beef stock is because I've made this, I know exactly what's in it, and more importantly, the salt content. There's no salt in this other than whatever natural salt was in the beef and the vegetables that I used. But other than that, I haven't put any additional salt. So now the reason I mention that is if you are using store-bought beef stock, you want to take that into consideration when you're tasting and salting for the rest of the dish. You can also use water. Now I am going to add a little bit of chicken bouillon to this, and I add that just to give it that little bit of extra flavor. If you were using water, I would use beef bouillon, and this is the Knorr's little beef bouillon cubes. 1 cube flavors 2 cups of water. So with this recipe, you're going to need 7 cups of stock, or 6 cups of stock. So you'd want to use 3 of those. I'm going to throw a couple of those in just to kind of give it that other little added flavor to it. Then, as I said, we're going to add a little bit of tomato sauce, whatever your favorite jarred tomato sauce or whatever's on sale. We're going to need some tomato paste. All right, we're going to use a little bit of thyme, a little bit of rosemary. I think that's it for our broth. And then for our veggies, we're going to use some Yukon Gold potatoes. You can use any potato you want, of course. I would suggest you use a Yukon or a red or a white potato opposed to a russet. You could use a russet potato, but a russet potato is going to break down and as your stew cooks, where a Yukon Gold or a red potato holds its shape a little bit more. I'm going to do some fresh green beans or frozen, and these are just fresh. I've washed them, cut them into little pieces, and the recipe that's going to go along with the amount in the recipe that's going to go along with the video, you need 1 cup. I've got 2. We got our potatoes, and again, we're just going to rough chop those. Don't have to be too fancy, into roughly bite-sized pieces so that everything cooks at about the same time. And I'm just going to do this before we get going so that we can just go quickly along with our cooking process. All right, and then we got, so you're going to need about 2 pounds, 2.5 pounds of potatoes. 1 pound for a regular recipe or regular batch of it. Same thing with the carrots. 1 pound of carrots sliced. Oop, that knife is sharp. All right, and then probably going to need about a cup of celery, sliced, of course. And you could do this however big pieces you like. I do them a little thin, especially the celery. Celery takes a long time to get soft. Of course, you're going to need a big stock pot. So, of course, same thing with your onion. Just do a little rough chop on that. Kind of medium-sized dice. All right. So I think we've gone over all of our ingredients. Let's get cooking. See you in a bit. All right, guys, so we're going to start with getting our veggies and our beef stock and other stuff in the pot and get that heating up, all right? So I got all my vegetables right in that bowl. And so I don't have to dirty another bowl, I'm going to use that bowl to make my meatballs in. So we got our beef stock. Give that a little bit of a stir. All right, I'm going to throw my vegetable bouillon in there. We got our tomato sauce. I'm just going to get a little water. Make sure we get all that yumminess out. All right, and then we'll get our tomato paste in there. I love tomato paste. I'm sure I've said that every time we cook with tomato paste. I could just eat it with a spoon. All right. I'm not quite sure if I mentioned that we needed some garlic. I would put at least a couple, 3-4 cloves of good-sized cloves of garlic. I've got some of the minced garlic that we used a little while ago in a recipe, and I want to use it up. So I'm going to use a good rounded teaspoon of it. Or, of course, you could use some fresh minced garlic. Oh, we forgot our green beans. And we're gonna use a little bit of rosemary and thyme. And I'm gonna use, where's my half teaspoon each of these. Well, you know what? I'm going to do a whole teaspoon because I use a half when I do a single batch. And just about the same in ground thyme. All right, so we're going to put this on the stove. And we're going to bring it to a boil, and then we're going to reduce it to simmer. All right, I'm going to move this off the stove. We're going to come back and we're going to do our meatballs. See you in a minute. Okay, so I've got our 1.5 pounds of ground beef. I've got my 1 egg in there. We need a couple teaspoons of Worcestershire. Now this is a little, not quite 1.5 pounds. I like to get about 22, 24 meatballs out of this little mix. You know, you can make them as big or as small as you like. I'll show you how I like to make them. We got our milk. Got all of our garlic powder, onion powder, salt, pepper. That's it. Now, I'm going to fry these because I like to get a nice crust on them. You certainly can bake them. All right, if you want to bake them, get them all ready, you know, preheat the oven to 350 and bake them for 20-25 minutes. We don't have to worry about them cooking all the way through because they're going to finish cooking in the stew. All right, so again, guys, so the next basic thing is I'm going to mix this all together. And you know, there's that train of thought that the more you mix any kind of meatball mix, it makes the meat tough. But that might be true. I've never really found it, but I do like to get it pretty well incorporated. It's going to feel like it's a little too wet right in the beginning, but it's going to quickly absorb the breadcrumbs and everything. Okay, that looks pretty good to me, pretty well mixed. All right, of course I put on some kitchen or latex gloves just because I don't want to have to stop and wash my hands while we're filming. All right, so then the next thing I do is, now I used to have a little 1/4 or 2 tablespoon little, you know, like ice cream scoop, but it broke and I haven't been able to find another one. So that's what I usually use for this. But since I don't have that, I'm going to just kind of eyeball it. So I'm going to say about 2 tablespoons per meatball. You can make them smaller if you want to stretch a little bit more, or you can, make them bigger. So I would say, oh, excuse me, if you guys heard that in the microphone, I just burped. I'm sorry. Cut. No. So what I'm going to do is I am going to get them all made ahead of time before I put them in the pan. So I'm just eyeballing probably about 2 tablespoons per meatball. And again, you can make them bigger. You can even half these, and then you get a nice little meatball in each mouthful. The reason I like this recipe is it makes quite a bit, and it is a little bit more economical, a little not quite as expensive to make beef stew, because of course stew meat is more expensive than a pound and a half of hamburger.
Double batch, right?
I'm doing a double batch. Yes, I actually already have a whole batch of meatballs done. But for one batch you get about, like I said, I'm going to get about 22 meatballs out of this, 22, 24. If it was a real whole pound and a half, I'm sure I'd get 24. And I don't know about you guys when you cook, but even when I make regular meatballs, I always like to know how many meatballs there are. I don't know why, but all right. So after this, we're going to fry them up. And so it doesn't, I don't bore the heck out of you guys watching me do this for the next 10 minutes. I'm going to finish this up. And when I get them all done, we'll be back and we'll fry them up. See you in a little bit. Okay, guys, so you can see which ones was stock. Now we're turning it into our broth. It's nice and boiling. All right, and we're going to turn this down because we want it to simmer. I'm going to say there for now. So we're just going to let that sit there and simmer for a while as we finish up. So, all right, we got all of our meatballs rolled up, and actually, I think it gave me 26 because I think I made the first ones a little small. You can see that's my first batch all fried up. Waiting to go in the swimming pool over there. All right, so again, as I said, you can, excuse me, my mouth is dry. You can do these, you can bake them in the oven if you want, 350, 20, 25 minutes. I like to get that little bit of brown on them. Let's get them in the pan. I have started that heating up a bit. You don't want to, just like when you're browning anything in general, you don't want to, ooh, that's a little tiny one. You don't want to crowd the pan. We could probably get about half in there. Yeah, maybe 2 more. All right, so right now I've got that on medium. Again, this is one of those things. You don't want to walk too far away. You don't want them to all of a sudden start burning on you. But we're just going to brown them on all sides, or as they're supposed to be balls, we'll try to get them to brown on all sides as much as possible. But nothing to it, right? All right, so again, so you don't have to sit here and watch me frying meatballs. We'll come back when I give them a turn over, and then I'll fry up the rest of them, and we'll get them in with the veggies. See you in a bit. Okay, I already got my first batch fried up. So thought we'd come back and just give them a little turn. So you see they just got, they got a nice brown caramelization, which you don't necessarily get when you do them in the oven. And I like the additional flavor that it adds. All right, so like I said, we're going to try to fry them evenly on all sides. Then when that's done, we're going to get our meatballs in with the rest of our stew. See you in a little bit. Okay, our meatballs are all golden brown and delicious. One thing I forgot to tell you guys, once you bring it to the boil, then you bring it to simmer. put a cover on it because we do not want all of this beautiful broth that we've made to evaporate anymore. We are going to thicken this up at the end with a bit of a cornstarch slurry. I didn't mention that during our opening, but we're gonna. So, all right, we're gonna get our meatballs in there. Now, the reason I decided to come over here and do them all one by one is I also wanted to mention that you certainly can do this recipe in the crock pot. Of course, do it the same way. Get your veggies in, get your meatballs in, and I would say on high, you probably want to let them cook. Let it cook 6 to 7 hours. On low, which I generally always cook on low when I do the crock pot, because I think the longer it's in there, the better. But I would say, at least 8 hours. Now, if I was going to do this in the crock pot, especially when I was working tons of hours, I wanted it for dinner that night, I'd prepare all my vegetables and my meatballs the night before. I would, put the veggies in a nice airtight container and just leave them out on the counter. The meatballs I would get all fried up and put those in the refrigerator. Then have all your, your liquid ready, set up, and throw it all in the crock pot in the morning. All right, so I want to eat one of those little meatballs now, but we'll put them in there. All right, guys, so there you have it. Oop, I don't know what I did with my spoon. Where's my spoon? Oh, well, we'll use this. So, well, like I said, our meatballs are pretty much cooked through. But we do want, some of the flavoring of the meat to merge in with our broth. So I'm going to say you're going to bring this back up to a boil because that has cooled down your water a little bit because we've added more to the pot. So let it come to a quick boil again, reduce it back to a simmer, and you want to cook it till your potatoes and carrots are to the tenderness you want. I'm going to say 20 to 30 minutes. I'm going to let mine go 30 minutes because, again, I like everything to sit together and merge. So we'll be back when it's time to eat. And don't forget, once you've brought it to the boil, reduce, simmer, put your cover back on. All right? See you in a little bit. Okay, I've let my stew simmer for about 35 minutes. My veggies are nice and tender. I've turned it back up because I wanted to bring it to a boil for the next step. All right, so you can see we're at a nice rolling boil. All right, and then I've got a half a cup of cornstarch and a half a cup of water. Stir it up now. Now I'm not going to put this all in at once. I may not need it all, but I might. But we'll give that a nice stir. Get it smooth. Oop, my spoon almost fell in there. I ended up changing pots because I didn't think my other one, which I actually like better, was going to be big enough. It would have been big enough, but all right. So we're going to slowly start to drizzle in. See if we can get some of our cornstarch, maybe about half of it. It's going to start to thicken up. Now, if you don't want to thicken it, you don't have to. I'll show you at about the consistency. I don't want to, I just want to slightly thicken it. That's almost there. It's got, and it has thickened up a bit from the water. I think I'll put about half more in. All right, that looks about just how I want it because we're going to let it sit for another 5 or 10 minutes or so, and it will thicken up a little bit. I don't know if you got a shot or it might be hard to see, but before we put the cornstarch in, everything was just kind of sticking down to the bottom. Now, I'd like it just kind of thick enough to about where everything kind of stays up. All right, so I'm gonna let that just simmer for another 5 minutes and we'll be ready to eat. I don't know about you guys, but we're starving. See you in a little bit. And we're back and we're ready to eat our supper. Let's dig in. Now, you know, again, this is a recipe that I kind of thought would be, you know, easy for people to stretch with, you know, the ingredients and so on. Add a little bit more of this, a little bit more of that. Make your meatballs a little smaller. When my mom used to make beef stew when we were younger, when we were kids, she would sometimes do, she'd make egg noodles and then have the stew over the egg noodles, which definitely helped stretch the food budget a bit. I bet this would be delicious with over egg noodles. Good?
Delicious. That's very good.
Nice, thick broth.
It is.
Now we'll dig into one of the meatballs. We've got, you know, this is really good with a salad and a nice crusty bread or some Texas toast.
Meatballs are delicious.
I can't get to it, it's too hot. That's really a tasty meatball. And it's nice to have a change with the stew instead of beef stew. It's nice and soft. All right, well.
Yep, very good.
I hope you guys have enjoyed watching us make supper tonight as much as we've enjoyed making it for you all. Would love for you to try this recipe. Let us know. That's all I can say.
Please like and subscribe. And check out cherryhillhomecooking.com and we'll see you in the next video.
Ciao.
Bye. This is really, this is great.
Delicious. No.